Welcome back. Find a comfortable position and let your body get heavy. Take a slow breath in and let it out. There's nothing you need to do right now. Know where you need to be. Tonight I have 5 stories for you. Let them wash over you. You don't need to follow along closely. Just let the words carry you. Let's begin. I remember a particular afternoon, not long ago, when the world felt wrapped in a gentle hug. The sun had settled into a warm glow, filtering through the curtains of my small kitchen, casting soft patterns on the tiled floor. I stood by the window, a mug of tea cradled in my hands, feeling the heat radiate from the porcelain against my palms. The air was thick with the fragrant scent of chamomile, mingling with the lingering aromas of the last meal I had prepared. A simple affair of roasted vegetables and brown rice. Outside, the neighborhood moved lazily. Children's laughter bounced off the houses, an echo of uninterrupted summer, while the occasional dog barked, adding a cheerful cadence to the moment. My kitchen was a space of comfort, familiar and full of memories. The wooden table held the faint scars of many meals shared with friends and family, and I often found myself lost in thought, tracing the grain with my fingertips, remembering laughter and stories that filled those moments. On days when solitude crept in, I would play the soft hum of music in the background, letting the melodies fill the silence, often choosing songs that reminded me of those gatherings, the clinking of glasses, the warmth of shared joy. But that afternoon was different. As the sunlight danced across the surfaces, a bittersweet ache crept into my heart, memories tugging at my thoughts. I took a slow sip of tea, feeling the warmth spread through me, and gazed out at the garden. There, in the corner where wildflowers grew untamed, was the old swing my father had built for me when I was just a child. I could see it swaying gently in the breeze, the ropes creaking softly, as if whispering secrets only the garden could hear. It had been years since I had touched that swing, years since the laughter shared there had echoed in the air. My father had not been gone long, but the absence filled more space than I had anticipated. There was a time when I could feel his presence in everything, the taste of my mother's cooking, the rustle of leaves on an autumn day, the laughter of friends gathered together. Now it felt different, as if the world had shifted slightly out of sync, and I stood on one side of a delicate balance, longing to reach across to where he used to be. As I approached the garden, the soft crunch of gravel beneath my feet felt grounding. The colors of the flowers, vibrant yellows and soft purples, stirred something within me, a reminder of the beauty that persisted even in the face of loss. I reached out to touch a petal, its delicate texture fascinating in the light. My father had always loved gardening, a passion he shared with me in my childhood. He would tell me stories of each plant, weaving a tapestry of life lessons into every seed he planted, a love for growth, nurturing, and patience. Settling onto the swing, I felt the familiar creak as the old wood supported my weight. I pushed off gently, not wanting to disturb the quiet as I began to sway back and forth, a rhythm that mimicked the ebb and flow of thoughts drifting through my mind. Each push was a reminder of those carefree afternoons, of laughter that seemed endless. With each swing, I could almost hear him encouraging me, urging me to go higher, to feel the thrill of the air rushing past. Memories flooded in, soft and warm, tinged with longing. I thought of the last summer we spent together, how he had helped me plant new flowers in this very garden, laughing as I fumbled with the spade. It was a day filled with love, the sun shining brightly, the scent of freshly cut grass, and the comforting banter between us. As I swung, I could almost feel the sunlight wrapping around us, the joy palpable, a treasure preserved in the heart. And yet, beneath that warmth, there lay a weight. I didn't want to forget those moments, didn't want to lose any of the laughter or love we shared. But as I sat there, the gentle sway of the swing became less about holding on, and more about letting go, as if the very act was a way to honor the past while still inviting the future. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs. I let my thoughts drift like the clouds lazily meandering across the sky. It occurred to me that while I could hold tight to those fragments of memory, the world was still moving, still inviting me to step forward. I could feel a pull of life whispering around me, encouraging me to find new joys, new laughter, and perhaps even new memories to cherish. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the garden, I began to swing a little higher, finding a sense of freedom in the motion. The breeze picked up, teasingly ruffling my hair, a gentle reminder of the passage of time. I closed my eyes and soaked in the sounds, the rustling leaves, a distant dog barking, a bird calling to its mate, all the little details that formed the background of everyday life. It felt good, releasing the tension that had settled in my shoulders. The swing creaked, steady and reassuring, each swaying motion drawing me closer to a sense of resolution. It dawned on me that while my father would always be a part of my life, the love we shared wasn't confined to memories alone. It echoed through my actions, in the warmth I offered to those around me, in the garden he tended so lovingly, which now flourished under my care. With every push, I could feel the burden lift, allowing joy to mingle with sorrow, creating a gentle softness in my heart. I could carry him with me into tomorrow without fear of losing who he was in the process. The sun, now settling into a soft orange hue, painted the sky, creating a masterpiece of colors that seemed to mirror my feelings. As twilight began to stretch its arms across the horizon, the world transformed around me. Shadows deepened, and a quiet calm spread throughout the garden. The swing came to a gentle stop, and I opened my eyes to take in the tranquil beauty surrounding me. The flowers looked more vibrant under the soft light, as if urging me to remember the joy they brought, even as they faded each season only to bloom anew. I rose slowly from the swing, brushing imaginary dust from my clothes, a smile creeping onto my face as I turned back toward the house. There was peace in my heart, an acceptance of the delicate balance between holding on and letting go. The world moved on, and so would I, carrying my memories like treasures tucked away in my pocket, ready to be taken out and cherished whenever I felt the need. As I stepped inside, closing the door softly behind me, the warmth of the kitchen enveloped me again. I placed my mug down, feeling grateful for the small moments, the memories that filled my heart. The rhythmic sound of my breath began to sync with the quiet of the home, a gentle acknowledgement of my journey. I turned off the light, casting the kitchen into shadow, and felt a comforting stillness settle around me. Outside, a soft breeze whispered secrets through the leaves, and I took one last glance back at the window, where the last light of day flickered like a memory before drifting into darkness. I climbed into bed, the sheets cool against my skin, and allowed my eyelids to grow heavy with contentment. The world outside faded, the sounds becoming a soft lullaby, and I breathed deeply, grateful for the love that remained, the laughter still echoing in the quiet corners of my heart. As I felt myself slip into a peaceful slumber, the gentle memories cradled me, allowing me to dream of brighter tomorrows. Take a deep breath, and let's move on to the next one. It was one of those evenings that felt like a warm hug, the kind where everything slows down as the sun begins to retreat behind the horizon, painting the sky in hues of soft peach and lavender. I remember sitting in my cozy living room, the scent of fresh-baked cookies wafting through the air, curling around me like a soft blanket. The cookies had just come out of the oven, their warm aroma mingling with the faintest hint of cinnamon, a smell that instantly made everything feel like home. Outside, the leaves rustled gently in the cool evening breeze, and I could hear the rhythmic chirping of crickets beginning their nightly serenade. I wrapped my fingers around a steaming mug of chamomile tea, its warmth seeping into my palms, a small comfort against the fading light. The fire crackled softly in the fireplace, the flames dancing and casting flickering shadows on the walls, creating a cozy atmosphere that seemed to whisper for me to stay a while. I was expecting my friend Lucy to drop by for our usual Friday night catch-up, and as the clock ticked softly in the background, I found myself lost in thoughts of our last gathering. We had laughed until our sides hurt when she mistakenly sent me a text meant for her cat sitter, asking if the cat had eaten her new shampoo. It was one of those delightful, silly moments that seemed to capture the essence of our friendship, filled with warmth and a touch of absurdity. Eventually, a soft knock on the door broke me from my reverie. With a smile, I placed my mug down on the coffee table, the gentle clink of ceramic against wood resonating in the calm room. I opened the door to see Lucy standing there with a big grin, her hair slightly tousled, a green scarf wrapped loosely around her neck, the kind that made her look like she had just stepped out of a watercolor painting. "Hey there. I brought something special," she said, her voice bright and cheerful like the first birds of spring. She held up a colorful bag, the kind you'd expect at a local farmer's market, with a playful pattern of vegetables. I vividly remember the way it crinkled as she waved it slightly in the air. "What did you bring?" I wondered aloud, glancing into the bag as she entered, her presence instantly brightening the room. "You'll see," she replied with a mischievous smile. She set the bag down carefully on the table, the sound of it settling amongst the other soft clutter, lending an air of warmth to the space. As we sank into our familiar spots on the couch, I tucked my legs beneath me and watched as she rummaged through the bag, pulling out various ingredients: fresh basil, vibrant tomatoes, and a chunk of mozzarella cheese that looked like it had just been cut. "I thought we could make caprese salad together," she exclaimed, her enthusiasm bubbling over, the way only Lucy could, a contagious energy that filled the room like laughter. "Oh, that sounds wonderful," I said, my mouth watering at the thought. "But now we were just going to have cookies and tea." "Well, yes, but I figured, why not make it a little dinner party? Just the two of us," she winked, her eyes sparkling with mischief. We got to work, chopping and mixing, flour dusting our hands and laughter punctuating the quiet moments. As we prepared the salad, I couldn't help but notice how the colors of the fresh ingredients mirrored the fading light outside. Reds, greens, and whites, like a canvas painted by nature itself. Lucy had the most delightful way of telling stories. As she chopped tomatoes, she regaled me with an account of her latest misadventure at a local art exhibit. So there I was, totally mesmerized by this giant abstract painting that looked like a splash of spaghetti, right? And as I stood there contemplating its significance, I realized I'd been staring at a piece of tape on the floor, instead of the actual art. She shook her head, her laughter wrapping around me like the warm air from the oven. We enjoyed the moment, letting the kindness of companionship fill the spaces between us. The salad turned out beautifully, a real feast for the eyes, and soon we were eating and reminiscing, our voices weaving a tapestry of shared memories, punctuated by giggles and light-hearted banter. "Do you remember the last time we tried to cook together? The pancake fiasco?" Lucy said, her tone taking on a teasing lilt. "How could I forget? You almost set your hair on fire with that spatula." I chuckled, recalling her frantic attempts to flip a particularly stubborn pancake. And then we ended up having cereal for dinner instead. "Ah, yes, the finest gourmet meal," she laughed, shaking her head. The warmth of those shared memories settled over us like the softest of blankets, and I could feel the gentle pull of sleep starting to thread through me. As we chatted, the fire crackled softly, illuminating Lucy's animated face, her expressive eyes flashing with playful mischief, and reminding me of why our friendship felt so effortless. She had a way of making even the simplest of moments feel like an adventure, a rare gift that I cherished deeply. Suddenly, she paused, her brow furrowing in a comedic way that made my heart swell with affection. "Oh!" I almost forgot the best part. She reached back into the bag and pulled out a small container filled with a tart green dressing. This homemade basil vinaigrette, made from the very basil I grew in my balcony garden. "I didn't even know you had a garden," I exclaimed, genuinely surprised. You're full of surprises tonight. I know. It's like my very own circus, she quipped, and I laughed, imagining her tending to a tiny garden in the midst of her bustling life. Once we finished, we settled back into our seats, the remnants of our simple feast scattered on the table, and smiled at each other, content and warmed by the evening's delight. As I sipped my tea, the warm liquid soothing my throat, I noticed the way the flames in the fireplace flickered in rhythm with the light outside, now giving way to the indigo sky studded with stars. They twinkled warmly as if they were part of our cozy gathering, watching over us as we shared stories of yesteryear and dreams of tomorrow. At that moment, it struck me how effortlessly everything flowed between us. It was the laughter, the quiet moments, and the way we could be silly together without hesitation. It formed an invisible thread connecting us, weaving a fabric of warmth that I hoped would last always. Then, in a brief pause, Lucy's face turned thoughtful, and she spoke softly. You know, sometimes I worry about getting older and drifting apart from the people I care about. I felt a gentle tug at my heart. But before I could respond, she continued. But then I remember moments like this, and I find comfort in knowing that we'll always have our funny misunderstandings and our caprice nights. Her words hung in the air, and I too reflected on the beauty of our fleeting time together. I realized that no matter where life took us, there would always be this safe space we created, stitched together with memories and shared laughter. Just know, no matter what happens, I'll always be around for salad and cookies, I replied, my voice soft, holding the weight of sincerity. You are a part of my garden, just like those basil leaves. Her eyes sparkled with that familiar mirth, and the moment lingered between us, a gentle reminder of the sweetness of companionship that made the world seem a little less daunting. As the evening wound to a close, the fire's glow softened, and I felt myself drifting, the warmth of our gathering lulling me into a comfortable stupor. I became aware of the sounds around us, the crackle of the fire, the distant chirping of crickets, and the gentle rise and fall of our soft laughter, each sound a gentle nudge into a sleepy cocoon. Lucy, noticing my relaxed demeanor, smiled knowingly. You're fading, my friend. Shall we call it a night? Lemons. I nodded, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over me. She stood and began to gather the remnants of our meal, her movements calm and purposeful, much like this evening we had shared. Once the table was clear, we took a moment to bask in the softness of the night. Two friends, encased in the warmth of a shared life, our laughter still echoing in the quiet room. As she prepared to leave, I felt the soft weight of contentment settle around me, a feeling of pure peace. The door clicked shut behind her, and I returned to my cozy spot, curling up into my blanket with a sigh of contentment. The fire had mellowed to a glow, and the stars twinkled outside, captivating and eternal. I felt a sweet heaviness in my eyelids, a gentle urge to surrender to the calm of the night, knowing that tomorrow would bring more moments like this, spun from laughter and friendship, rich with the simple beauty of being together. With one last glimpse at the trembling flames, I whispered a silent thank you to the universe. For evenings like this, the tapestry of friendship that warmed the heart, and the stories yet to unfold. And as I closed my eyes, I let the soothing rhythm of the evening lull me into a peaceful slumber, wrapped in the love and comfort of a shared life. Here's another story to drift off to. I remember the way the sun filtered through the kitchen window, casting gentle stripes of warmth across the worn wooden table. It was that cozy sort of morning, where the scent of freshly brewed coffee swirled around me like a comforting embrace. The kettle hummed softly, its steam rising like lazy tendrils, while the faint rustle of newspaper pages echoed in the background. I could hear the distant chirping of birds greeting a brand new day, their songs blending with the soft clink of spoon against porcelain as I prepared my breakfast. It was just a simple bowl of oatmeal, sprinkled with a touch of cinnamon and a few slices of banana. But in that moment, it felt as if I were savoring something extraordinary. As I settled into a chair, the sunlight glided across the table and warmed my hands, making me feel rooted and settled. The world outside was still waking up, the shadows retreating from doorsteps and sidewalks, and I could hear the soft crunch of footsteps as my neighbors began their day. The old couple, 2 houses down, always in sync with one another, emerged hand in hand, their laughter mixing with the breeze like an unspoken language. I took a deep breath, letting the aroma of my breakfast fill my senses, the sweetness of the bananas blending perfectly with the earthy warmth of the oat. On this particular day, I had decided to take a walk after my meal, a small habit I had cultivated over time. It was one of those mornings where the sky was painted a soft shade of blue, dotted with just a few fluffy clouds lingering, as if they were contemplating their direction. I slipped on my well-worn sneakers, each scuff telling a story of adventures past, and stepped outside, greeted by the fresh air that wrapped around me like a gentle hug. The quiet streets were lined with trees, their leaves shimmering with the soft whispers of the wind. I walked along familiar paths, observing the details that often went unnoticed. The way sunlight danced through the branches, creating patterns on the pavement, or how the flowers in Mrs. Henderson's garden swayed slightly, as if nodding in approval of the day ahead. Each step felt like an invitation to slow down, to linger a little longer in the moment. As I continued my stroll, I found myself meandering toward the small park at the end of the block. It was a little oasis of greenery, where the laughter of children mingled with the calls of birds flitting about, and the gentle rustling of leaves added a serene soundtrack to the scene. I settled onto a weathered bench beneath an ancient oak tree, my back resting against its solid trunk. The bark was rough against my skin, grounding me as I watched the world unfold before me. There was a young mother nearby, her hair pulled back in a cheerful ponytail as she pushed her giggling toddler on the swing, the rhythmic creaking of the chains punctuating their joyful laughter. I couldn't help but smile, remembering the simple joys of childhood. The delight of swinging high and feeling the rush of air, as if I could touch the sky. Nearby, 2 elderly gentlemen sat at a picnic table, deep in conversation, their faces crinkling into smiles and laughter that echoed through the air. It was one of those moments that felt suspended in time, where everything was perfectly in place. It was then that I noticed an elderly woman sitting alone on a bench across from me. Her hair was a delicate silver, arranged neatly atop her head, and she wore a soft blue cardigan that wrapped around her like a gentle cloud. But what caught my attention was her eyes, twinkling with a warmth that seemed to radiate even from afar. She was gazing at the children with a smile, lost in the affection of their laughter. And as she caught my eye, she gave me a slight nod, her gesture inviting me into her little world of calm. My heart felt a bit lighter as I returned her smile, a warm exchange that connected us even across the distance. After a few moments, she beckoned me over with a subtle wave, and I found myself rising from my bench, drawn in by the kindness that seemed to wrap around her like a familiar blanket. "Good morning," she said cheerfully as I approached, her voice soft and melodic, like a soothing song. "Isn't it a lovely day?" "It truly is," I replied, settling down beside her and feeling a little comforted by her presence. We spoke of the weather, of the park, and of the little joys that seemed to spring from the simple moments in life. She told me about her grandchildren who lived far away, a bittersweet tug in her voice as she recounted their little adventures. I listened intently, feeling privileged to share in her stories, which felt like delicate threads weaving our lives together for just a fleeting moment. As our conversation flowed, I felt the world around us fade into a comforting silence, as if we had carved out our own peaceful bubble in the bustling park. We chatted about the flowers, the birds, and the little things that brought us joy, the mundane becoming joyous merely by the act of sharing. She had a way of observing the world, noticing the details that most people rushed past, and I found myself drawn to her perspective, fascinated by the wisdom hidden in her laughter. Occasionally, her gaze would drift toward the children at play, and I could see a flicker of nostalgia in her eyes. "You know," she said softly, Sometimes we forget how to play as we grow older. We get so caught up in life's responsibilities that we forget the joy of simply being. My. Her words lingered in the air, and I found myself considering them deeply, the truth resonating within me. There was something refreshingly innocent about her outlook, a reminder that life could often be filled with little treasures if we paused long enough to notice them. As our time together unfolded, she pulled a small bag from her purse, revealing a few homemade cookies wrapped in delicate paper. "Would you like one?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with an unpretentious excitement. It seemed such a small gesture, this offering of a cookie, but in that moment it felt like a grand gift. I smiled as I accepted one, savoring the soft, buttery texture against my tongue, the warm chocolate melting into a rich sweetness that filled the air around us. We each took a bite and laughed together as our crumbs danced between us, carried away by the gentle breeze. We shared stories of simple joys, of warmth in unexpected moments. She spoke of the kindness of strangers, and I shared tales from my own life, threads of connection weaving us closer together. We became two wanderers temporarily resting in the same sunlit spot, united by a shared understanding that life was richer when shared with others. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a golden glow around us, I realized that our encounter was winding to a close. The children began to pack their things, and the elderly men stood, giving a hearty farewell as they strolled away, their camaraderie leaving behind echoes of laughter that lingered like the last notes of a beautiful song. "I should be off," I said reluctantly, knowing that the world outside beckoned me back to its rhythm, but feeling a bittersweet pull in my heart. "Oh, but my dear," she said, her voice warm and assuring. "Remember, life is filled with kindness if we open our hearts to it." I nodded, her words settling deep within me, a gentle reminder that kindness often comes wrapped in unexpected moments. We exchanged a final smile, one that felt like a promise to carry our encounter forward, and I waved as I turned to leave the park, a sense of warmth enveloping me. As I walked back home, the sky transformed into a soft canvas of pinks and oranges, casting a warm glow over everything it touched. The air was cooler now, carrying the scent of earth and grass, and I felt grateful for the small moments that had intertwined our lives, if only for a brief while. I returned to my cozy kitchen, the sun setting gently outside, casting long shadows that danced across the floor. I brewed another cup of tea, feeling the warmth seep into my hands, reminding me of the woman who had shared her cookies and kindness so freely. I settled back into my chair by the window, watching as the stars began to twinkle, each one a little reminder that the world was full of light, even in the moments that felt heavy. The stillness wrapped around me, and as I took a deep breath, I felt a sense of peace settle in my heart. The evening quieted, and there was something comforting in knowing that kindness exists in the world, waiting for us to notice it. As I gazed out at the night sky, it seemed to whisper secrets of connection, an embrace of warmth across the universe. I let my eyes flutter closed, surrendering to the soft embrace of the night, holding on to the simple joys that had brightened my day, the memory of a stranger's kindness, serenading me into restful slumber. Here's another story to drift off to. The scent of warm vanilla and hazelnut wafted through the air, wrapping around me like a soft blanket as I leaned against the counter, watching the dappled sunlight filter through the kitchen window. It was late afternoon, the golden hour casting gentle shadows across the table, where an assortment of mismatched mugs stood waiting, some half filled with coffee, others still in need of that first pour. I could hear the faint sound of leaves rustling outside, dancing in a light breeze, whispering secrets to one another while the sun dipped lower on the horizon. It was one of those quiet afternoons where time seemed to stretch and relax, each moment unhurried and warm, like a favorite sweater pulled slightly tighter against the chill of autumn approaching. I took a deep breath, savoring the rich aroma of the coffee brewing, the comforting hum of the kettle simmering softly in the background. I had settled into this little routine, a moment carved out just for me, but it was about to welcome someone new. His name was Liam. I remembered the first time we met, seated at opposite ends of a small table in the corner of that cozy bookstore cafe. The gentle murmur of voices blended with the clinking of ceramic mugs as two worlds quietly collided. I was deep into a particularly captivating novel, the pages fluttering gently in the breeze from an open window, when I heard a soft, hesitant voice break through my concentration. "Excuse me," he said, and I looked up to see him standing there, a light blush staining his cheeks as he held up his hands, fingering the spine of a book that had caught his eye. I didn't mean to intrude. I just... I wanted to ask if you've read this one. No, Dame. I remember how his eyes shone with a mix of curiosity and nervousness, darting between the cover of the book and my face. I shook my head, feeling a warm flush of embarrassment. Here was this gentle stranger, and all I could manage was a simple nod, while the cafe buzzed around us like a distant hum. For a moment, I forgot the words of the book that had entranced me so deeply. Instead, I became caught up in the way the afternoon light softened the edges of his features, the way his hair fell slightly into his eyes as he studied the cover with a seriousness that made me want to smile. And so I did, a small, quiet smile, the kind that held a world of possibilities and unspoken connections. We began to talk, tentatively at first, like two shy creatures emerging from their respective shells, testing the waters of conversation. The topics danced around us, twirling from books to our favorite spots in the city, and I could feel a warm glow blossoming between us, wrapping around both our hesitations like a comforting cocoon. We shared laughter that felt unforced, light and airy, floating above the clatter of cups and the idle chatter of customers. In those early days, every interaction unfolded like a delicate petal opening to the sun after a gentle rain. We would meet up every Sunday afternoon, our conversations deepening as the weeks rolled into months. Sometimes we would sit in that cafe where it all began, the familiar faces of baristas greeting us with knowing smiles, and other times we would wander through the park where the trees stood tall, the leaves turning to shades of amber and gold. Neld. Liam had this beautiful way of listening, as if each word I spoke was precious to him. I could feel how he absorbed my thoughts and dreams, holding them carefully, like they were fragile glass. It was in those soft moments, where we'd sit side by side on a weathered bench, the world around us fading into a muted backdrop, that I truly began to understand how comfort could look and feel. I remember a gray afternoon, rain tapping softly against the window panes of the cafe, the sound like a gentle lullaby. We were tucked away in our corner, watching droplets race down the glass, when Liam glanced over at me, his eyes glinting with mischief. "You know," he said with a playful grin, "watching the rain can be a competitive sport." "Oh." I raised an eyebrow, my heart quickening with curiosity. "How so?" "Well, you need to assign point values," he explained, gesturing animatedly with his hands. "1 point for each drop that makes it to the bottom first, and bonus points for the ones that veer left or right." He looked so serious as he laid out the rules, I couldn't help but chuckle. A genuine laugh that felt like warmth spilling out of me. And we both leaned back, pulses racing with amusement, settling into that shared quietness that came between us. The kind that didn't require words, but felt thick like honey in the air. It was a comfortable pause, where the world faded just enough to feel as if it were only the two of us, lost in our own little universe, nestled safely away from the bustle of life beyond those walls. As autumn progressed and the air grew crisper, we found ourselves sharing more than just stories, slowly weaving our lives together like threads in a tapestry. I invited him over for dinner one evening, the warm glow of the kitchen washing over us as I prepared a simple meal. I can still hear the pop of the garlic sizzling in the pan, the laughter ringing out between us as we navigated the little tasks together. He offered to chop vegetables while I stirred the pasta, his serious concentration often decorated with the occasional goofy grin when I caught him sneaking a piece of bell pepper. I remember how I almost burned the garlic toast because I was too busy watching him, how his brow furrowed in concentration, and how, when he finally noticed my gaze, he reached over and gently flicked a stray strand of hair from my face, his fingers a soft whisper against my skin. Those evenings became a ritual of their own, where the line between friendship and something deeper blurred gently, like a watercolor painting slowly revealing its colors with each brushstroke. We would sit back on the couch with homemade cookies and steaming mugs of cocoa, our laughter illuminating the room as we shared bits of our lives, the silly quirks, the cherished memories, and even the quiet fears that crept in when the suddenly dot. Lights dimmed, but there was still a quiet uncertainty that occasionally nipped at my heels, a lingering thought that would tug at my mind in the late hours. I found myself silently wishing that he understood the depth of my feelings, the way they swelled and overflowed like a bubbling stream, eager to tumble forth but held back by my own shyness. One evening, cocooned in the blanket of our shared silence, I gathered every ounce of courage and decided it was time to speak those words that had danced on the tip of my tongue for far too long. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in delicate hues of lavender and blush, I turned to him, my heart racing. "Liam," I began, my voice barely above a whisper, uncertainty weaving itself into my words. I think I really like you. Now I'm." The air thickened around us, and I felt my cheeks flush as I watched him pause, the gentle surprise etched on his features. Then he smiled, a warm, brilliant smile that lit up his eyes. "I like you too," he said, the words softly tumbling out like a sigh of relief. At that moment, the weight of hesitation lifted, and I could almost hear the world outside the window settle back into its rhythm. We leaned closer, the distance evaporating, and with a softness that felt like a promise, we connected, not just as friends but as two souls finding their way towards one another, guided by the quiet understanding that had blossomed between. Yes, the weeks that followed were a gentle unraveling, filled with tender adventures and explorations, from visiting art galleries on rainy Sundays to simply strolling hand in hand through the falling leaves in the park. Each moment felt significant, imprinted upon my heart like a cherished keepsake. I remember one particularly chilly evening, bundled up in thick scarves. We decided to visit the little carnival that had come to town. The laughter of children mingled with the sweet scent of cotton candy, and the colorful lights sparkled like stars against the night sky. Liam and I wandered through the maze of stalls, sharing wide-eyed wonder at the whimsical displays. I remember how he had playfully challenged me to a game of ring toss. I was so focused on the task that when I finally scored, I spun around in excitement, only to find myself face to face with Liam, his laughter wrapping around me like a warm embrace. "See? I knew you were an expert," he teased, and I felt my heart swell as I tossed my head back in laughter, the sound mingling with the joyous chatter of the evening. As the night wore on, moments unfolded like petals in bloom, each filled with the sweetness of shared delight, an unexpected half-hug during a silly game, our shared cotton candy as sticky fingers reached for the last fluff, and the way our glances lingered just a fraction longer, filled with all the things left unsaid. Life continued, each day weaving us closer together. We would often find ourselves sprawled on the couch, wrapped in blankets, reading our favorite books, the quiet sounds of pages turning surrounding us like a soft lullaby. And in those serene moments, when we both read in comfortable silence, I would pause to glance at him, catching a glimpse of his deep focus, the way the light danced across his features, and I'd feel that familiar rush of affection swell within me. And so here I am, reflecting on those seemingly small moments that stitched our hearts together, the way that kindness and patience had created a safe harbor for two introverts to embrace their own version of love, gentle, unhurried, and, ah, quietly profound. I think back to the quiet hours spent simply enjoying each other's company, the laughter and the small exchanges that would illuminate our shared existence. I remember that one autumn evening when we stood on the porch, the air crisp and cool, with a blanket draped over our shoulders like a shared secret. Sometimes I think I should just tell my younger self to be brave, I mused aloud, glancing sideways at him as we breathed in the scent of fresh earth after a light shower. Maybe just remind them to enjoy the ride, he replied, his eyes sparkling with that familiar kindness. Everything will fall into place in its own time. And I smiled, feeling a sense of calm wash over me, like the tide gently pulling back after a wave. There was something so beautiful in knowing that love doesn't need to be grand or loud. Sometimes it lives in the quiet spaces, in the laughter shared over coffee, the gentle brushes of fingers, and in the simple act of being together. As the days turned into weeks and the season shifted into chillier nights, I learned to embrace those gentle moments of connection, recognizing them for the treasures they were. The warmth of a hand held just a little longer, the way laughter hung in the air like a sweet perfume, and the simple comfort of knowing that I wasn't alone in my introversion, that we had carved out a little haven for ourselves. I've come to understand that love, in its truest form, is a quiet understanding and the willingness to share silence, woven together with the soft threads of kindness, patience, and perhaps a little humor. And as I lean back into the present, I feel a peaceful gratitude for the journey that led me here, for the moments that shaped who I am. I take a deep breath, feeling the warmth of contentment settle into my bones, a familiar sense of home wrapping around me like a gentle embrace. The world remains outside, a quiet promise waiting for tomorrow, but for now, it's just me, here in this cozy moment, sipping on the last of this day's warmth, while I let my eyes flutter closed. The kitchen around me fades into a comforting stillness, the light dimming gently as I imagine the laughter echoing in warm corners, the sweet scent of home, and the softness of a love that feels like a... And with each breath, I settle deeper into that warmth, grateful for the journey, content in the quiet, and ready to drift softly, softly into dreams. Take a deep breath and let's move on to the next one. The flickering light of the fire danced softly against the walls of my little living room, casting shadows that seemed to sway along with the gentle patter of rain outside. I sat nestled into the corner of my well-loved couch, wrapped in a thick knitted blanket that my grandmother had made long ago. The air was warm and smelled faintly of cinnamon and cedar, remnants of the season transitioning from autumn to winter. My hands cradled a steaming mug of chamomile tea, the heat radiating through the delicate porcelain, almost a mirror of the cozy warmth enveloping the room. Outside, the world was painted in muted grays and blues, the sky heavy with clouds that lost themselves in the gentle drizzle. I could hear the rhythmic tapping of raindrops against the window pane, a soft melody that added to the serenity of the evening. It was a perfect night for reflection, and as I took a sip of my tea, I felt the warmth spread through me, calming my mind like a soft lullaby. I recalled the day that had brought me to this particular moment. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon, as I stood by the window of my small office. I had been staring out at the golden leaves swirling in the crisp breeze, contemplating a decision that weighed heavily on my heart. The office was filled with a stillness that felt almost sacred. The only sound was the soft rustle of papers as the fan above me stirred the air lazily. My gaze drifted to the tiny succulent sitting on my desk, a steadfast little creature that had thrived despite my sometimes erratic care. It seemed to urge me to find strength in my own growth, just as it had. I had been working for a company that, while secure, no longer fed my spirit. I felt like a book abandoned on a shelf, dusty and forgotten. I wanted to explore new ventures, to chase dreams that had whispered to me in quiet moments. But the fear of the unknown was a thick fog that blurred my vision. I thought back to my earlier hesitations, the back-and-forth conversations that bubbled up with my friends over coffee. What if it doesn't work out? I had wondered, my heart racing at the thought. They had smiled gently, their eyes glimmering with encouragement. But what if it does? It was this gentle nudging that ultimately created the bridge between my fears and the leap I knew I needed to take. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, allowing the weight of uncertainty to settle into a quiet acceptance. There was an inviting stillness in that moment, as if the universe had paused to listen. I finally penned my resignation that afternoon, each stroke of the pen feeling as if I were carving a path into my own new story. As the memory washed over me, I found my breath deepening, the gentle rhythm echoing the cadence of the rain outside. The fire crackled softly, sending embers dancing upward. I felt a small smile tug at the corners of my mouth, a blend of nostalgia and excitement washing through me. It was as if, in those fleeting moments, I had shed an old skin, allowing new possibilities to breathe freely in the space left behind. The days that followed played out like a montage of hope and healing. My mornings became infused with a sense of purpose. I rose early, the sun still shyly emerging from behind the horizon, its golden light spilling through my kitchen window and painting the walls in warm hues. The smell of brewing coffee would mingle with the scent of fresh muffins, filling my home with an embrace of comfort and inspiration. I threw myself into freelance projects that allowed my creativity to bloom, and each email sent, each project completed, became a tiny affirmation that I was indeed on the right path. I had also made a point to reconnect with friends, my laughter mingling with the soft clinking of glasses and the warmth of shared stories. Over candlelit dinners, we would recount our own journeys, tales of missteps and triumphs, laughter punctuating our conversations like the cheerful ring of a bell. It was in these moments, surrounded by those who knew me best, that I began to understand the profound beauty of connection, grounding me even further in my pursuit of joy. As the fire crackled, I let my thoughts drift to the quiet evenings I spent journaling, capturing my reflections under the soft glow of a desk lamp. The pages of my notebook filled with sketches and words, each sentence a thread weaving together the tapestry of my new life. I wrote about the little things, how the sunset painted the sky in brilliant swaths of orange and pink, filling my heart with gratitude. I recorded my thoughts about resilience, weaving in the lessons learned from the succulent that had thrived against all odds, a reminder of the strength simmering within me. There was an evening, in particular, that stood out among the rest. I had ventured out to a cozy cafe, cradling a steaming cup of chai, its warmth punctuating the chill of the air. As I sat by the window, watching the rain trace delicate patterns on the glass, I noticed a couple across from me, comfortably ensconced in their own little world. They shared a scone, laughter bubbling between them, a soft harmony that resonated in my heart. Watching them, I realized how beautifully intertwined we all were, our stories and experiences weaving together in this grand tapestry of life. That night, I returned home feeling buoyant, the taste of newfound freedom still lingering on my lips, like the last sip of a cherished drink. I let the blanket I now held close slip from my shoulders as I wandered back to the couch, curling into the fabric and enveloping myself in the warmth of gratitude and love. This was the quiet glow of a life rediscovered, a life where I could dance freely amidst uncertainty. As I lingered in the warmth of memory, I let my thoughts drift like the clouds outside, the rain soothing and steady. The world felt spacious and inviting, full of potential, and I knew that I was ready to embrace it all. I could feel the gentle embrace of sleep beginning to pull at the edges of my consciousness, the calm rhythm of my breath blending with the sound of the fire and the rain. The soft light began to dim, and I closed my eyes, surrendering to the warmth that enveloped me. Night stretched out ahead, a tapestry of dreams waiting to unfold. I allowed the blanket to weigh me down, each fiber a gentle reminder of comfort, as soft as the whispers of the self I was becoming. The world outside continued to dance in the rain, and within my heart, a quiet peace settled as I welcomed sleep, ready to embrace the beauty of the new dawn awaiting me. In this moment, all was well. The fire flickered, the rain sang its lullaby, and I was home. And that's the last story for tonight. You have traveled a long way to get here. Through 5 quiet worlds, 5 small lives, 5 gentle resolutions. Your breathing is slower now. Your body is heavy and warm. There's nothing left to think about. Just the quiet. Just the dark. Just rest. Good night.